Hi everyone, so I was saying in my last video that I was working on some armor that I was going to have to weld, and I figured it was about time I just blew the money away by buying a welder, and I got one at Tractor Supply. It wasn't a particularly expensive one, it was actually the cheapest one I could find, but it's mostly just to get some practice and work on some present projects, to get the hang of welding, because there's a welder at school, but time at school is often used for school stuff, whereas I can use my time more or less as I wish here at home, so I can use it to practice any number of things. So I'll show you the welder I got. It's called a flux core welder, and on the box and on the thing itself it says it's a flux core MIG welder, but I haven't found any provision on it for gas for MIG yet, and I'll explain all that stuff in a second. So, yeah, it weighs about 40 pounds, I think, and I'll show it to you now. Let's see. That is it. Oh, I can actually. I wasn't sure if I could zoom in while I was filming before, but I guess I can, after all. Put it all the way down. There we go. Now you can see it better. I'll zoom out just a tiny bit. There we go. You can see it's called the Job Smart Flux Core MIG 125 Welder Fan Cooled. And that's what it says. Now on this little door here, we can open it up, and you see we have some storage space in here for things like a brush and a little chipping hammer type deal, and the flux core wire, which with regular MIG welding, which is what I've done before, MIG stands for metal inert gas, which essentially means you've got a wire, but a different wire from this, coming out through this tube hose type deal into this gun here, and it pokes out right here, if you can see that. Not sure exactly what the camera sees right now, but it comes out of there, and an arc or current is transferred from the welder itself into here, and it sparks on the metal really hot constantly. And these sparks are like upwards of 10,000 degrees, which melts the metal and fuses it together. So with metal inert gas welding, whenever you've got a metal like steel which can oxidize, or really any metal oxidizes, but when you're working with a metal like steel that can oxidize, it does so extremely quickly under high temperatures, which means you have to shield it from contacting with oxygen. And an inert gas like argon, I think, a common one is 25% argon, 75% carbon dioxide. Whenever you put that gas around the weld site, it shields the metal from oxidizing, and when you get an oxidized metal during your weld, it produces a brittle, crappy weld, which you don't want. With flux core wire, on the other hand, you don't have that inert gas, and instead there is flux inside of a hollow wire, which shields the metal from oxidization while you're welding. So you don't have to worry about you don't have to worry about it oxidizing there. One advantage of flux core over, well, I can think of two advantages right off the bat of flux core over MIG, which is, one, it's cheaper. This thing was $140, whereas the cheapest, I think, MIG welder that I could find was around $300, and that was before I started having to buy gas for it. Gas is very expensive for some reason. But the first thing is price. The second is, if you're welding outside, as I've been doing so far, because I don't want to catch my garage on fire, if you're welding outside and it's a windy day, the wind can blow the gas away as you're welding, which is not good. With flux core, you don't have to worry about the wind blowing your gas away as you're welding, so no problem. But this thing has 3 different cords on it. I'll show you those now. Coming out all from the front. And it looks like a great mess, but they're all like 6-foot cables, and I'm having to do a very small space. Okay, so one of them is the gun itself. And I've already explained that, I think. Whenever I pull this trigger, it both feeds the wire through, and it triggers the arc to occur. It allows the current to flow. This is the ground clamp and the ground wire, which I clamp onto the piece of metal or any piece of metal touching the piece of metal that I want to weld, and that transfers the current so that, I mean, if I just put this on a piece of metal, like, I got a piece of metal right here, I could do, if I had the ground clamp down there doing nothing, and this thing was turned on, I could do this all day with the trigger pressed and it would do nothing. I have to clamp it on and then do it for it to actually work. Right now I don't have it turned on, which is why it's not feeding the wire or arcing. And that's the only reason I just did that without a mask or gloves or anything else like that. And then there's just the power cable, which is explanatory enough. And one thing I didn't realize about welding until relatively recently is that you have to wear a full mask rather than, you have to wear a full mask, full protective gear for everything, or really crazy sunscreen, because these arcs release UV radiation, which I didn't realize. So, I mean, you can get a really bad sunburn if you're welding for even a fairly short time. You could be welding for just a couple of minutes without gloves or with just a pair of goggles on. If you're not wearing a full face mask, a full length shirt, full pants, gloves, everything, you can get a bad sunburn. I mean, one of the guys at school who's in the welding program was TIG welding, which is tungsten inert gas. I'm not going to get into that right now. And he was doing it like, he had his sleeve pulled up for something. I think he was wearing gloves, but he had his sleeve pulled up for something, and he was TIG welding for just a couple of minutes, and he had a big bright red sunburn. I mean, well, it's not technically a sunburn, but it's a UV ray burn, which is the same thing as a sunburn. Hello.
Good night, Pumpkin.
Good night.
I love you.
Love you too. That was my mom. She's going to bed. But, yeah, if you don't have all the right protective gear, you can burn yourself pretty bad. I've so far been wearing full gloves, full-length shirt. I've been wearing a turtleneck for all this stuff so far, plus it's pretty cold anyway, and I've been wearing a leather apron. TIG welding, so, no, not TIG, sorry, forget TIG. I've done some MIG welding at school before, and that has a good bit of splatter, but when I started doing this flux core welding, it has a lot more splatter than MIG does, so there's a bit more cleanup, but once you get good with it, you can make pretty much the same quality welds. I mean, this thing is not very powerful. It can't weld material that's much thicker than 1/4 inch. I'm probably not going to try to use it for anything much thicker than that, but like the welder at school, you could weld together 2-inch thick plates with that thing, no problem. This thing was, as I said, cheap and not very powerful, but powerful enough for the needs that I have here at home. It should serve me well enough for a while until I can actually save up the money to buy a proper MIG welder or maybe even a TIG welder. TIG is really cool stuff. I had the people at school weld me up some stuff for a personal project with TIG, and that was really clean. There's like almost no splatter with TIG welding. But I'm going to get myself an auto-darkening helmet at some point, because I have a helmet already, but it would be really nice to have an auto-darkening one. And I'll do a full welding video at some point once I actually get good enough that I might be able to demonstrate something without making a fool of myself. Yes?
Sorry to interrupt. Are you going to work tomorrow?
No, tomorrow's Tuesday.
That's what I thought. I mean, I wasn't sure if for some reason you were going to. Okay. Don't stay up too late because you were feeling lousy this morning and you need a good night's sleep.
Yeah.
Then I'll need you to help Grandma get dinner started tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
She knows what needs to be done, but you'll have to help because it'll be too heavy.
Okay.
Okay.
So, in the meantime, that's all I can think of right now. Yeah, I'll have to do an acid etching video for you guys, and I'll do a welding video for you guys, but, let me zoom this thing out. Is that completely zoomed out? Yep, looks like it. But anyway, have a great day.